Hello everyone, it's me, Arashi, the greatest hippogriff reviewer in the analyst community. In case you are wondering where Tricky Fox is, he is hiding on Grey Silvermane's channel after they get lost in a desert and were attacked by the French with copyright claims. If you want to hear them talk about On the Road to Friendship, you will find a link in the description below and at the end of this video. But now it's my turn! What Lies Beneath is so far an interesting episode, as it is pretty much the only episode that actually does something with the new cast of characters that were introduced this season, besides the season opener and finale. Okay, there was also that half-warming episode, and arguably non-compete clause, but that's about it. You could replace them with random background ponies in most of their appearances, and nothing would really change. The only character that seems like a worthwhile addition in my opinion is Smolder, as the writers are at least somewhat forced to do something with her in Spike related episode, as she is also a dragon. So she isn't really a waste of space like the others. Well, and in all fairness, Yona got a couple of good moments in A Rock Hoof in a Hard Place. Now to make one thing clear, I don't dislike the Young Six, they are actually pretty fun characters. I'm just a little bit upset that the show does nothing with them. Heck, Koziglaw is a more developed character at this point, who also appears in this episode. Yeah, I tell you kids, the writers have some plans with that character. There's just something off about her. Cozy certainly doesn't help her case, as she throws some rather racist comments towards the 5 non-ponies of the Young Six. That being said, unlike the downright stupid, offensive racism portrayed by Chancellor Nasey, it is actually handled rather well here. What Cozy says is offensive, but in an oblivious way. It is meant to be well-meaning, as she admires that they try to learn about friendship, even though she thinks that it is not in their nature. She basically calls them a credit to their races. It shows that even if someone is not outright hostile like Nasey, they can still have prejudices, even if they are not aware of them themselves. That being said, the problem still is that from what we have seen in the show, she is pretty much spot on with her reasoning. There's even points to be made that Twilight thinks similar, as she opens the school to teach creatures that know nothing about friendship. Have I mentioned that I think MLP does a poor job handling this topic? However, while I do think that Koziglow's comments are supposed to be innocently naive and that she doesn't quite realize that she might offend them, she might do it on purpose to trigger a reaction. Maybe she tries to motivate them this way so that they prove her wrong and study harder for the test. Or maybe she offends them on purpose to get a reaction out of them, which would prove that friendship really isn't in their nature. Given her limited role in this episode, it is a bit hard to tell. In any case, her comments do plant some seeds of discord among the Young Six, and they are all rather upset, which apparently attracts the attention of the Tree of Harmony, and I guess the tree is a character now. And rather judgmental too. Getting worked up right away because the Young Six are a bit upset, and I think it's safe to assume that Gallus didn't really think that friendship is not in their nature. He is just salty about the comment and is hurt by it. When he said it, it did have a rather sarcastic undertone to it. And what does the tree do? Test the Young Six by confronting them with their worst fears and threatening to keep them captive in that underground cave forever. You know, for something that is supposedly the opposite of Discord, the tree acts rather similar to Discord. The mind games it plays here do remind me somewhat of Discord's actions in The Return of Harmony. It is actually kind of funny. Maybe the implication is supposed to be that Discord and Harmony are two sides of the same coin. In general, I do like the concept, but the problem is I don't quite get the intention of the tree. The individual tests have barely anything to do with friendship, with the exception of maybe Yona's and Sandbar's tests. Especially the latter, as it is less about fears, but rather his loyalty. Okay, there are some merit to them if you dig a little bit deeper. Sandbar's test is just rather obvious. He is forced to choose between his friends and his idols, and he refuses to abandon his friends. This one is easy and hardly worth discussing. But what about the rest? Well, Gallus' test is perhaps the worst designed. He gets confronted with his fear of small spaces, but the test is less about him overcoming this fear than just escaping from the room. Especially since he immediately reasons that it has to be a test, so there has to be an escape. While he is uncomfortable while doing so, it is basically just a game which he figures out rather quickly. It is more or less the same with Smolder, whose test is playing along with girly stuff, which isn't really so much of a fear. After all, she does like it, she just doesn't want to admit it. Both Gallus and Smolder figure out what they have to do to escape rather quickly and don't really learn anything from it. They only really show that they care about friendship because they decide to stick around and look for others instead of escaping. Okay, this was probably part of the test as well, but in theory all of them could have escaped on their own, and it does feel a bit unfair that some of them need help from others to pass the test. But I have to admit that those tests seemingly help both Smolder and Gallus to open up a bit more, as Gallus talks about his fear and Smolder about her secret love for girly stuff to calm down Ocellus and Silverstream. Ignoring the context, Ocellus' test is probably the most interesting. She sees herself as Queen Chrysalis, who embodies everything bad about the past of the changelings. It seems that she fears that they didn't really change after all, and that she might turn out exactly like Chrissy. Not to mention that it is rather hilarious to see Chrissy acting like that and speaking with Ocellus' voice. But she's unable to overcome her fear until Smolder says that everyone can change. There isn't really much of a friendship lesson to be found here. Maybe that you shouldn't let yourself be defined by your past, or simply that everyone can change and therefore that everyone is capable of friendship if they just want to, but it was executed rather badly in context. Silverstream's test is similar. She couldn't overcome her fear of the Storm King. Yeah, that kinda makes the implication that he comes back somehow for trailers. Didn't believe it for 1 sec. He is pretty dead. Which is rather disappointing because I think they wasted a lot of potential with him. Now the lesson she learned is that she isn't alone and indeed has friends that will support her. That friendship helps them to overcome even monsters like the Storm King. The intended lesson is somewhat decent, but in the end she can only stand up to a couple of rocks after she got a confidence boost from Gallus. She felt way too passive. This test would have worked better if there had been other hippogriffs, like for example her brother Terramar, remember him? If Silverstream had some company from the beginning and overcomes her fear by realizing that their strength lies in unity, it would have worked much better than Gallus basically explaining to her that there is no reason to be afraid. I do like these scenes, but I don't like them as tests for Ocellus and Silverstream, as they rely too much on others to solve them for them. There is a point to be made that these are the actual tests for Smolder and Gallus, as they are forced to talk about the stuff they tried to keep secret until now. And then there's Yona's test, which is actually alright. Like the rest, she is confronted with her fears, but she soon realizes that she doesn't have to be afraid, as she sees that the scary spiders are actually harmless and are maybe just as afraid of her as she is of them. She learns to see the good in pretty much everything, even things that might seem scary, and actually befriends the spiders. So yeah, her test is the only one that actually involves befriending something. Also, it is kinda funny to see that the yak who likes to smash things turns out to be the one most similar to Fluttershy in the end. These scenes gave us quite a bit of insight into the new characters, and they are rather entertaining to watch. I did feel for Silverstream when she was confronted with what she thought to be the doom-bringer of her people. Ocellus' transformation was incredibly intriguing, and I liked the display of loyalty by Smolder and Gallus. But in the end, all tests could have been absorbed without learning much about friendship. If they were all required to help each other, or if they didn't help each other at all, it would have actually worked better. Another option would have been to test them on the elements of harmony, so that everyone gets a chance to show the element they represent best. And while Yona's test is arguably a bit of a kindness test, the only other element that was tested here was loyalty. Unless you want to consider Smolder's test to be about being honest with yourself. But I don't see much laughter or generosity here. Heck, when it comes to teaching stealth lessons, Discord is actually better, even if he only does it for the sake of trolling. But in the end, things worked out for them, and they proved to themselves and the tree that friendship is indeed part of their nature. They are free to go, and Cozy Glow convinces them that they shouldn't tell anyone about it, so Twilight doesn't learn that she was responsible for their fight. But she also makes sure that they can take the test on a later day, seemingly genuinely caring about them. Yeah, that's the thing about Cozy Glow. She seems genuine yet still off-putting. With that being said, let's wrap things up. I personally like this episode a lot, as it gives some much needed depth to the young six and finally gives them something to do. The themes of prejudice are handled with much more nuance in this episode than in School Days, which is why they work much better here. But I do think that the tests of the three were rather bad designed for what they were supposed to accomplish. If they weren't explicitly meant to test them, but rather something that happened to them in the Everfree Forest, for example, they would have been just fine. But the challenges seemed a bit unfairly distributed and barely taught the intended lesson. Not to mention that they seemingly weren't quite clear if the test should be about overcoming one's own fear or loyalty. But my biggest issue with this episode is that it is just so late into the season. This is episode 22 and I still think that they really wasted the school concept this season and did hardly anything with the new characters. They deserve more episodes like this. But what about you? Did you like this episode? Anything that bothered you? Let me know in the comments below. I am Arashi, the greatest hippogriff in the analyst community.
Sly as a fox, you got me under your spell, but you know I'll never tell.